Tech Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, a nationally ranked community-focused bank with over 30 locations throughout Virginia, Northeast Tennessee, and North Carolina. Who you choose to bank with can make all the difference. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
Hello, Tech fans, and welcome to Tech Sideline Podcast, episode 410. On today's show, we have a special guest, new Virginia Tech offensive coordinator, Philip Montgomery. We'll discuss his background and previous stops, from his time at Houston as a coordinator to his record-setting offenses at Baylor and his head coach experience at Tulsa. We'll also get into what made him want to come to Blacksburg, his influences, what he brings to the Hokies, and more. It's all coming up on the Tech Sideline Podcast, which starts right now. We welcome you into TSL Podcast episode 410 with special guest Philip Montgomery, Virginia Tech football's new offensive coordinator. We're recording on Tuesday, February 18th, 2025 from our high-tech studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. I'm Tech Sideline's managing editor, David Cunningham, your host for today's show. To my right is Chris Coleman, Tech Sideline's lead analyst and columnist. Nick Brown, Tech Sideline's director of media, is behind the scenes producing the show. And across the way is our special guest, Philip Montgomery, Virginia Tech's new offensive coordinator. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Coach Montgomery comes to Hokies by way of the Birmingham Stallions in the UFL. Before that, he was at Auburn as the offensive coordinator, the head coach at Tulsa for 8 seasons, where he led the Golden Hurricane to the AAC title game, and had great success as a coordinator at Baylor and Houston. This will be a Q&A format where Chris and I trade off asking questions, and we'll start with this one. What made you want to become the offensive coordinator at Virginia Tech?
You know, this has always been kind of a special place, you know, when you got Enter the Sandman and the atmosphere and all the things that kind of go into Virginia Tech football. And then, you know, I got the opportunity to meet Coach to meet Frank when we played in the Camping World Independence Bowl. And, you know, I got to see everybody's fans and everybody showing up. And, you know, my wife and I actually talked, this would be a cool place to coach one day. I think more than anything else, though, with what Coach Pry is doing, the foundation that he's built, the culture that is going on here, as you look at the roster, I thought it was a place we could go in and have success. And all of those things aligned, and this is a job that I really went after. I mean, I pursued it, and luckily got the opportunity to be here.
When you were the head coach at Tulsa, you also called the offensive plays in the game. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. What was the most challenging aspect of that arrangement? Would you do it differently if you had it to do over again?
To answer the second part first, I would probably do it differently now. Mm-hmm. I think with just everything that's going on with college football, when you got the portal, I just think you're getting pulled in so many different directions, and having to manage and control and help keep intact everything that's going on within the football program. I think it'd be difficult to get that done in today's college football. Then, still difficult, but you said the hardest part of it was, again, time management. Just making sure that you were giving enough to every piece of it, right? And so when you're getting pulled in directions, hey, I want to be in this quarterback meeting room, but I need to go handle this, or I've got to go do an interview, or a kid comes to my office and I want to have the opportunity to sit down and spend the time that I need to with him. You know, there's so many things that are pulling you. So you got to do a great job of just managing your time and making sure you're being diligent in what you need to.
How did seeing the game from the perspective of a head coach make you a better offensive coordinator?
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, that's a great question. For me, my first coordinator roles, I didn't think about the defense in that way. My job was, we got the ball, let's try to go score, and let's score as fast as possible, and score as many as possible. I think as a head coach, when you start having to play a little bit more complementary type football, because, hey, this week we're playing this team that's really good on offense, you know, our defenses, you know, could potentially struggle. You know, how do we kind of make this game work where we keep it close to the fourth quarter, instead of trying to get in track meets where It's just up and down the field, try to score as fast as you can. Just being able to manipulate that and understand it. Or if the defense did a good job, held them to a field goal, but it was a 12-play drive, and I go out and go, 2 plays and score or whatever that might be. Now they're right back on the field. They haven't had a chance to adjust. They're still tired from the last one. So all of those things I think factored into it, and that's what's helped me grow.
You recruited Kyron Drones out of high school.
I did.
Yeah,
I didn't get him, but I recruited him.
What did you see out of him then, and what do you see out of him now?
Some of the same things. Just he's got some God-given abilities. Number one, he's got a big arm. He's really, really put together well. He's a stout young man. He can run. He does a good job in the run game part of it. But I think we can help develop him into an overall quarterback, and really build on not only his strengths, but turn some of those things that I think we can get better quickly at and make him a more polished, a more balanced quarterback that can do so many different things for us in the offense that we'll run here.
You've coached so many very talented quarterbacks like Robert Griffin III, Case Keenum. In your mind, what makes a great quarterback?
All those guys were different. Whether you're talking about Kevin Cobb, Case, Robert, Nick Florence, Bryce Petty, Dane Evans, all those guys are unique within themselves, and I never wanted to compare them to anybody else, and I didn't want them to do that. I think the number one key, all of those guys were extremely competitive. They brought different attributes to it. Bryce could stand back there and sling it and throw it wherever you wanted to at any point in time, and as he grew, he got more and more accurate with it. Robert was a powerful arm guy, but just so athletic and do so many different things. And like Houdini, he could just get out of stuff. Case was kind of the magic man, in my opinion. Like, didn't have the strongest arm, wasn't the fastest guy, but always knew how to manipulate the pocket, get out of stuff, fit things in small windows. But those guys were all competitive. They were all intelligent guys, and they understood the concepts of being great distributors and making the people around them better.
You spent quite a while coaching in high school after college. It took you a while to break into the college ranks as a coach. Was that always the plan, to be a college coach, or did you originally see yourself as a high school coach?
No, it really wasn't the plan. I did my GA where I played at Tarleton, and I met my wife one spring there, and as a GA back then, you were really not making any money. And so I always wanted to be a high school coach. I went that route, enjoyed every bit of it, learned a lot, helped me grow. As a young guy, when you're, helping with all the different teams, whether it's the freshman team, the sophomore team, the JV, the varsity, you get opportunities to call offenses when you're young because you're working with younger guys, and that gives you some experience doing it. We got the opportunity to go college, and I was about to take a high school head job, and my wife and I sat down when we got that phone call. We had 24 hours to make a decision, and we decided to do that, and it's been a blessing, and it's been fun, and it's taken our lives in a lot of different directions.
High school and college, offensive coordinator, head coach, Auburn, Baylor, Houston, the UFL, lots of roles, a lot of different levels. What can you take away from each of those unique experiences?
Well, I'm a learner. I like to learn, and I like to have opportunities to see growth in myself and in the people around me. And so being able to experience that at so many levels, and even the UFL last year, I had a tremendous time. I went back, I was coaching running backs and tight ends as well as being the co-OC, and I hadn't got to do that in a long time, so it was good to kind of get back into that part of it. It's all about the relationships that you build while you're coaching, and it's about those players. And so I've grown in a lot of ways to be able to be a head coach, to be a coordinator, but then step back and kind of get a deep breath and see the bigger picture, trying to think in some things and kind of continue to keep evolving and growing, because you have to be on the cutting edge if you want to stay ahead in this game. And I feel like right now I'm going to be the best version of who I am today because of those experiences.
Virginia Tech fans know from recent experiences that cohesiveness between the offensive coordinator and offensive line coach is very, very important. I know it's very early, but how have your initial conversations gone with Matt Moore?
It's been great with Matt. You know, we had kind of bumped into each other out on recruiting 12s when he was in the Big 12. Mm-hmm. That being said, part of my interview process was Matt and I got on the phone. We were probably on the phone for several hours and just kind of talking ball, talking philosophy. This is what I like to do. This is what he likes to do. The good part about all of that is it meshed really well. And I thought we hit it off right off the bat. And before I came over here, I was in his office and we were talking through stuff. So I see that relationship growing and building, and I think that's going to be a really positive thing for us.
What do you feel like is the key to having a successful offensive line up front? And it sounds like you and Coach Moore are off to a great start, that building that relationship.
Well, it all starts up front, right? I mean, you got to have all the skilled guys running around doing their thing, but when it really comes down to it, the big guys up front are the things that make it go. And so I think for us, you know, as we get on the field, we lost a couple of guys from last year's team that had been longtime starters and did good things for them. We got to replace some of those. We got some new faces that have come in. We got some young guys that are ready to step up. A couple of guys got some experience late in the year because of injuries and others. So, you know, as we get into spring ball, we'll get a better feel of where we're at. But, you know, we've got athletic guys that can run with a lot of length, that they can bend. And they're getting stronger and stronger every day. And so today was the first day I got to see those guys and just a little bit. And so I'm excited to see what we can do in spring and watch those guys grow and develop.
I think because you've tutored so many successful quarterbacks, people view you as a passing game guy, but you've had a lot of very successful rushing offenses in the past too. Do you have any strict running game philosophies? How can you use the quarterback in a running game, specifically with a guy like Drones when that's one of his strengths?
Yeah, you know, the great thing about our offense is if you go all the way back to the origins of it, it really was an option-based type offense. And so a lot of the things that they were able to do last year in the run game, those are all going to be able to stay. We've used those for a long time. We've not invented, but we've used new versions of it. You know, anything that we can do to keep the defense on their heels, make them use eye discipline, keep them off balance with misdirection and others, I think that will really benefit us. And when you've got a guy like we have in the backfield, a guy that can really throw it but can run it, and he's hard to tackle, and he's got speed, and he can be elusive, you know, I think that's just the double weapon. And so for us, we got to continue to be able to grow and develop in those ways.
Have you it sounds like you've become pretty familiar with this Virginia Tech roster already. What kind of stands out to you, and how excited are you to kind of get your hands on these guys and work with them?
Yeah, I really am. I mean, you know, I think we've got a good nucleus of guys coming back. We've got some guys with a ton of experience. We've got a couple of other guys that, as the year went on, got a little bit more. And then we've got some young guys that I think are ready to kind of emerge on the scene and prove themselves. And so for me, it's about getting out there spring ball and seeing, okay, where's the best spot to move these pieces around to make us the best 11 guys on the field at one time. And so, you know, I think we've got some growth in some areas. I mean, obviously, when you lose, 3 of our returning receivers, I think that's a talented room, yet you've got a little bit more youth to it right now. And so it'll be important how spring and fall camp and the summer go, just to watch those guys develop and grow within what we're going to do offensively.
You talked about tempo when you addressed the team earlier today. How big is that, whether that's speeding the game up or even slowing it down?
It's big to me, right? And like I've said, you know, when we were at Baylor, it was, you know, call as many plays as you can call it like your hair's on fire. Our goal at that time was try to get 100 plays in a game. If you hit 100 more times, you were going to win. I think defenses have adjusted to that. If you're going to play fast all the time, they have systems installed now to kind of stay with you in that. I think what does cause them problems is when you're able to change that tempo throughout the game. Hey, we're we're normal, we're speeding up, we're slowing down, we may huddle, we may change the cadence, we may have a look with me type of deal. To be able to have all those different variables within your offense to be able to use. And there may be one game you use a ton of tempo. The next game you may only tempo 2 times. I think the flow of the game and the game plan of that game going into it, because again, it goes back to, I think, your question 2 or 3 questions ago, how I've grown and changed as a play caller and understanding how we play complementary football here with who we're playing and how we got to play that game.
In 2016 at Tulsa, kind of going off of a little bit what Chris asked earlier, you had a 3,000-yard passer, 2 1,000-yard rushers, and 2 1,000-yard receivers. How important is that kind of balance in your offense?
I love being balanced with it. There's going to be certain games where you may have to throw it, maybe certain games where you may have to run it. My philosophy to that has always been, sooner or later, you're going to come across somebody good enough to stop what you do best. Right? So if you're a team that throws it, 70, 80, 90% of the time, you're finally going to come across somebody, whether that's they've got a great D-line that can pass rush and still get people in coverage, they're dropping 8 all the time, whatever that might be. Or if you're a run team that does not throw it very well and that box just gets full and you're just banging your head against the wall trying to make first downs, being balanced allows you the ability to keep them honest about the way they want to play you and how they have to play you.
What attribute has all of your successful offenses in the past, what attribute has each one of them possessed?
I thought we played very physically, even though people see us as this, throw it around the yard, run game this. I thought we always played very physical in our style of play. I thought we were always explosive, and we spread people out to put them in situations where they felt vulnerable. They didn't feel comfortable. And I think when you do that and mix in being able to spread them out, squeeze them in, get heavy sets, do what you've got to do from that standpoint. And when you've got a quarterback like ours with the ability to run and then expand the field as well, you add in all of those triple threats to it, I think that's when you cause defensive coordinators problems.
In your experience, what makes a good coordinator?
I think it is a guy that is comfortable enough to understand that everybody in the room has got great ideas, that you can be open into listening and growing with them. So many times a conversation will start, right? Hey, I kind of like this thought, and then it grows and develops into something maybe completely opposite of where it started. But those conversations create the opportunity to be creative. And so I like having guys in the room, smart guys in the room that push me to grow. I'm going to push them to grow. But I've got to be open to all of that part of it. Sometimes coordinators, I think, feel like they've got to go in there, get it all done on their own, try to game plan it all on their own, do all of that. That's never been my philosophy. And it'll be a team effort as we go through it.
What do you remember about that Independence Bowl against Coach Beamer and the Hokies? I just remember there weren't a lot of punts.
No, there wasn't. I remember going down for the press conference. It was just he and I think the ADs were there, and then they had all the independents.
You were a first-year head coach that year, right?
My first year. His last. And, this coaching icon, Hall of Famer, all of that. And to be able to sit and visit with him, he was so comforting to be around. There was no arrogance about him. He was just a ball coach like I was. But you also understood he is the Hall of Fame guy, right? And the whole week should have been and needed to be all about him, and it was. And but when we got on the field, it was good. We got to lock horns. I saw Bud today in the hallway too, and got to visit with him a little bit, and that was fun. And so I know I think Virginia Tech that year a little bit banged up defensively coming in. We were we had gotten better as the season went on offensively and had a chance to be explosive at times. And then, if I remember correctly, first quarter it was pretty well bang, 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 bang. I don't think anybody stopped anybody. And I think Virginia Tech may have been up like a touchdown or 7 right before half, and we got the ball. I think we popped about a 40-yard run to right before half as time was running out, and got it close. And then second half, I just didn't know if we could hold on and stay with them that long. Obviously, we didn't, but it was cold, but it was a great game.
You said you ran into Coach Foster in the hallway. You guys are working together now.
Yeah.
What do you remember about coaching against him and the way his teams played, and how cool is it to be coaching alongside him now?
It really is. I mean, number one, I thought he was always a little bit ahead of the game defensively. You know, he was very aggressive in what he did. But, you know, in his style and the athleticism of all these, what he called linebackers and everything else that were like, they were built like defensive ends, but they moved like linebackers. He had safeties that looked like linebackers that ran like deer, you know, and they made the field seem smaller. They just were able to cover space so quickly. And he would bring pressure from anybody and everybody at any point in time in the game. And so we knew we had to try to keep him a little bit off balance if we could, because if we got in bad situations from a down and distance standpoint, here comes the exotic blitzes that, you know, very few people were able to pick up at that time.
What did you learn in your 1 year with the UFL?
You know, it was different. You know, your team size is so small, right? And so, you know, just how you practice, you got to understand when you get them there, you've got about, well, really, we did a scrimmage versus another team, I think, within the first 5 days. Mm-hmm. You know, so like when you're looking at installing and how quickly do you have to get it installed, you know, you had 3 weeks and you played your first game, and so, or 4 weeks, and you know, that's pretty tough. And so I thought there were some things you got to understand what's important, what's kind of on the frilly side of stuff, and what's your bread and butter. Let's make sure we've got this part of it down, and then making sure that you're using your talent in the most proper way that you can use them, because you know you're going to grow as a team throughout the year because you're just going to get more time with them. But as quickly as that thing rolls, and there are some really great players in that league. I mean, on our team itself, you had anything from first-round draft pick guys to free agent guys, but they were all great college players, and it was fun to get to coach them.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on. Thank you, Coach Montgomery, for coming on and joining us. It was great chopping it up with you.
Hey, I appreciate the opportunity. Look forward to coming back. Y'all made it easy. I mean, I was ready to keep going, but let's roll.
For Coach Montgomery, for Chris Coleman, for Nick Brown behind the scenes producing, for Travis Wells, who helped set this whole thing up. This is Tech Sideline Podcast, episode 410. Signing off. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll talk to you soon.